Good evening, everyone. And again, welcome to our webinar, Applying to Gonzaga as a First-Year Student. Thank you for joining us from all around the United States and the world. Again, my name is Levi Garcia Morales, and I am the admission counselor here at Gonzaga. I primarily work with students from Western Washington, primarily around the counties of Pierce, Thurston, Lewis, and Grace Harbor, as well as Central Washington, specifically around the Tri-Cities, Yakima, Walla Walla, and from the entire state of New Mexico. I'll be one of your hosts for this webinar. You may have noticed that the microphone and the chat box are going to be disabled. And this is just because so we can record this for our participants who want to view this in the future. We would love to answer your questions though. So throughout the presentation, there's going to be a little Q&A box where you can type in your answers. So please feel free to use that as you like to. And we will have our colleagues answering them throughout the rest of the presentation. We'll try to get through as many questions as we're able to, so please feel free to use that periodically, and we'll try to check on that as much as we can. And we'll try to share as many web pages and links as we can that we hope you will find useful throughout the presentation. Now I have several of my colleagues joining with me today. And we'll start with Alexa, who is our co-host. So Alexa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexa, and I'm an assistant director of admission here at GU. I work with students from the state of Nevada, as well as a big chunk of Southern California. And I am super excited to be here tonight and also to be with you throughout this process.
Thanks, Alexa. Also, our colleague Sarah is here answering questions in the Q&A chat box. Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Sarah and I'm an admission counselor at Gonzaga, and I work primarily with students that are in Northern California and Southeast Washington. And I'll be one of your moderators for this webinar, so I'll be answering questions in the Q&A as well as posting different links in the chat for you.
Thanks, Sarah. And lastly, Steve, would you like to introduce yourself as well too?
Hey everybody, I'm Steve Keller, actually calling in tonight from Baltimore. I am the Senior Director of Admission, and I work with students from select schools in the Bay Area, Portland, and Seattle. I'll be the other moderator for this webinar, answering questions in the Q&A and posting links in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve and Sarah. So as they mentioned, please keep those questions coming. We're going to try to answer as many as we can, either through the Q&A or out loud. But to get us started talking about the application process, we're going to start with a poll. So how many of you have started your application to Gonzaga? We're seeing quite a few different answers, a lot of yeses, which is exciting, but some no's, and that's okay. You'll learn. You've got plenty of time to get that application into us. So we'll give you a couple more minutes, a couple more seconds, I'm sorry, to answer that. And it looks like we're stabilizing pretty well. So to share the results, you can see most of you have started your application, but if you haven't, you're not alone. It is only September and you've got plenty of time.
Again, welcome to this webinar. We know that the college application process can be a little bit stressful. So it's our hope tonight to kind of relieve a little bit of that stress. And we know that sometimes there might be a lot of things that could be unknown. So, and you also have no control over them. So it's kind of our hope to let you know about the things that you do have control over and give you a little bit more insight towards the application process for Gonzaga, as well as kind of give you a little bit more insight into the process itself. So, So at Gonzaga, we use the common application for both domestic and international first-year students. This is an application that's accepted by a lot of universities, so it kind of decreases the number of applications that you have to fill out. The cost of the common application is $50. And for those of you in need of an application waiver for the Common App, there is a few different options that you can pick from. The Common App has a box that you can check where you can request a fee waiver, so in case you have any economic reasons, and your high school counselor is going to confirm that. Additionally, Gonzaga alumni also have the ability to submit waivers on your behalf of students through the alumni page of the Gonzaga website. It's under the benefits section, and more importantly, we never want the inability to kind of pay for the application fee to be a barrier for kind of applying to admission to Gonzaga. So if you ever have any questions in the future, please feel free to contact the Office of Admission. We'd be more than happy to help you out.
So we read applications holistically. So we look at 5 main factors for most of you, 6 if you submit your test score and want to use it. We are test optional, and we're going to speak more about that in just a moment. The first of the 5 factors is grades and grade trends. When we look at a student's GPA, we also consider their grade trends, whether they're going up or down or remaining consistent, and circumstances that may have led to that trend, including challenges throughout the pandemic or other things like learning differences or outside activities that may have impacted those grades. The middle 50% of students enrolled at Gonzaga were between a 3.56 and a 3.92 for an unweighted GPA. This means that 25% had GPAs below a 3.56 and 25% had a GPA above a 3.92 on an unweighted scale. We use an unweighted GPA so that all students are on the same 4.0 scale, while at the same time looking at curriculum separately and giving it considerable weight as well. All students applying to Gonzaga should have a standard college prep curriculum. By college prep curriculum, we mean that students should have 4 years of English, 3 to 4 years of math, 3 years of a social science, 2 to 3 years of the same foreign language, and 3 to 4 years of a science. We know that more challenging classes can make for students who are better prepared for college. And so we encourage you to take challenging courses as they're available to you and still allow you to have balance in your life. Additionally, to prepare students better for college and therefore factoring into the application and merit scholarships a student may receive, many times students can bring in credits if they meet certain test requirements or the college classes that they've taken that are equivalent to ones offered at Gonzaga. We will add a link to the chat showing our AP, IB, Cambridge, and Running Start or college in the high school policies and equivalencies. Please note that if you will have college credit from college courses you took while in high school or AP, IB, or Cambridge tests you took, you are still considered a first-year student with credit and not a transfer student. You may have enough credits to have junior standing in college, but you'll need to follow all of the deadlines for first-year students. So that's December 1 for admission. And you are eligible for first-year scholarships for all 4 years, not just the transfer one. So it's really the best of both worlds.
So we do have some direct admission programs here on Gonzaga. Our only direct admission program is nursing. So for those of you future nurses out there, you're interested in the nursing program, you will need to list nursing as you're on the application itself. For nursing program applicants, we really do have a small program here at Gonzaga, and this is our most competitive major. The first thing that we look for in an application is 4 years of math and science in your high school curriculum. Here at Gonzaga, we prefer students have biology, chemistry, or other life science labs and courses, such as anatomy and physiology, but other sciences are more than fine too as well. It's helpful also to have some experience shadowing or volunteering in health settings, but we do want to recognize that not every student may have the same opportunity to do so in all areas. Students may only enter the nursing program as a first-year student, and since this is a kind of a cohort model program, with the students kind of taking their first classes and their clinicals together, it's not possible, unfortunately, to transfer into the program. And with the exception of homeschool students, Gonzaga is also test optional for admission for all the majors here on campus, including nursing. This also includes all scholarships and all special programs such as the honors program. In other words, students applying without a test will have the same access to students applying that with test scores do. When a student applies without a test score, we will place a little bit more emphasis on the other evaluation of their application, such as grades, curriculum, and the writing throughout their application. If you do have a test score already and you're wondering whether or not to submit it, here are the mid 50% for our test scores. In our incoming class, it's 1265 to 1410 for the SAT and 28 to 32 for the ACT. You are welcome to kind of discuss your specific situation with an admission counselor. We're more than happy to kind of sit down with you and have that conversation. But in general, if you already have a really strong curriculum and a GPA, you would have to have a very high test score at the top or over our mid 50% to have that test score make a difference in your application. Homeschool students who have more than 30 semesters or 45 credits of transferable credit from a college or university or a community college at the time of the application do not need to submit a test score, though those who do have less college credit are required to do so. For all applicants, on our Gonzaga questions page at the common application, you will be asked whether to mark if you want to submit your SAT or ACT test as part of your application. If you do mark no on your application, then Gonzaga University will not use that test score, even if you have sent it to us previously. If you mark yes, we will use your test score, and we will try to keep trying to contact you to get your test score, even if it is missing from your application at the time you apply. If you have taken the same test more than once, please note that we will super score your total score by taking the best score from each exam. And as well from each subsection as well too, such as math and evidence-based reading and writing on the SAT, and then kind of adding them all together. So if you are using your scores, it's helpful to provide us with all your scores so we can use the highest ones from each exam. And please be in communication with your admission counselor if you do change your mind on whether to change your mind on using a test score or not using a test score as part of the application. And please know that if we haven't finished our evaluation process, then we will make the change for you. We do expect that December 23rd will be the date which will be unable to change the test status for a student. International students, you do have to still submit a test to show English proficiency. We'll put a link in the chat box to showcase where you can look through the options and requirements for showing English proficiency, such as an online Duolingo test. Overall, if your scores are below our English proficiency guidelines and you don't qualify for a waiver, our Gonzaga Global program may be a good fit for you because it provides English language support for students, and it will help you be successful as an undergraduate student here at Gonzaga. If you do choose to use a test score to meet the English requirement, please note that you will still have to, you will also still have that option to be test optional for admission as well.
So as part of our holistic review, we do also consider your commitments to your outside of school activities. We are looking more for depth in an area rather than that he's done everything offered. Gonzaga is a very community-oriented place, and our students get very involved in campus and in the community. So we seek students who enjoy being involved, starting new clubs, serving as leaders in some capacity, and engaging in their communities. Please note that working, volunteering, and family responsibilities are important to list as they show responsibility, dependability, and engagement in your community. We don't value one type of activity over another, such as sports over music or music over DECA. We are interested in all of the talents, passions, and abilities you bring to our college community. We also recognize that opportunities for extracurriculars have been or may continue to be a little bit more limited right now. The common application requires an essay, and there's a short answer question on our Gonzaga questions page, and another one that will appear if you mark yourself as a nursing major. Finally, there's a section of the common application that allows you to address any hardships and issues you've had as a result of COVID, natural disasters, and there's a section where you can address dips in your grades or other academic or personal challenges and recoveries. We do encourage you to use these sections if they apply to you, so you can give us more context to your personal situation, environment, and academic history.
For the essay portion of the common application, you have the option to pick from one of 7 different prompts. And the last one is kind of the make up your own question. So you have really limitless options that you can select from. We really try to encourage you to sort of pick the one that sort of speaks to you and is one that you can kind of write about really well. I also try to encourage you to make your topic narrow rather than broad. So for example, for me personally, writing about my passion for swimming is very, very broad. But if my topic is something more like what I learned from taking swim lessons for 10 years, then that's a little bit more of a narrow topic that I can cover pretty well in the space allowed. And it also kind of allows me to showcase a little bit more about the reflective piece with it. We really want to see that you can write well, but we also want to learn more about you from your essays. So you're more than welcome to be kind of creative with this and really be kind of free about it. So for example, there was a student who wanted to be a journalist. So she wrote in her essay, interviewing herself 5 years into her career, or kind of the student who wanted to be a poet, who included a poem that tied into their essay. Really, overall, the best essays kind of let us experience what you experienced at the time that you were writing the essay. So they really kind of show, not tell. An example of telling for a student writing about debate is for example, that I've been on the debate team for all of my high school years and I've won many tournaments. It's an intense, sometimes scary activity, but I enjoy it. The showing part, on the other hand, and it's a little bit more adeptly written, showcases a version that could read something like this. Like, I scribbled firstly as my point of facial argument, making sure I could counter each point. Then, as it was my turn to speak, I pushed away my anxieties, and the usual rush of energy came over me. And I remember I live for debate moments like this one. Strong essays also use really vivid imagery and sometimes dialogue. They reflect on what the experience meant to them, as well as kind of tying the essay back from the beginning, referring again to something that opened the essay, so that the reader knows that it's coming to sort of a conclusion. Strong essays are also really well proved for errors. And I'm sure this kind of goes without saying to the audience today, but they also use appropriate capitalization, punctuation, grammar, even if it is in the short answer questions. I can't tell you the number of times that I've seen little i's or parents' names in lowercase. Well, just to keep a note that we're not going to throw away the student's application in a way, it doesn't leave the impression you want to leave. So overall, professionalism is a highly important aspect to keep note as you work on your application.
And again, as we are a community that really cares about one another, the final piece we look at is your character, as shown through a letter of recommendation from an academic subject teacher, so someone who you had in a class, not just a coach, and your secondary school report, which is filled out by your high school counselor or your school office. A letter from your high school counselor is not required, though if your counselor sends one, we do add it to your file. A final option is to do an interview with a counselor. And as you can see, we highly recommend that for students with a 3.2 GPA or lower, or anyone who feels like that a talk with an admission counselor may better help explain their academic history or personal needs better. We are also happy to meet with students no matter what their GPA and academics show, as the more we know about you, the better we can connect you with special opportunities at Gonzaga, such as separate application scholarships that may be a good fit for you. We offer interviews via phone, video chat, and in person if you're able to visit, and you can sign up for them on our virtual Gonzaga and Visit Gonzaga pages, which we'll put in the chat. You are always welcome to contact your admission counselor for your region to learn more and answer your questions. We're going to add the Find Your Counselor webpage to the chat. And so if you do an interview with us, we cover your questions, individualized information on majors and interests, as well as scholarships and financial aid. So speaking of scholarships and financial aid, we will be offering a webinar on October 10th at 6 p.m. Pacific time that covers scholarships and financial aid. So we hope to see you back for that one in October. We will also be hosting a webinar on October 5th at 6 p.m. Pacific time called How to Celebrate Diversity at Gonzaga with our Unity Multicultural Education Center and the Lincoln LGBTQ+ Resource Center. And a webinar on October 17th called How to Build Community, where you'll be invited to meet with some of our colleagues in offices such as Mission and Ministry, Gonzaga Outdoors, Health and Counseling, and more, as well as some of our students as they share their ZAG experiences. We'd love to share more Gonzaga stories and resources with you and learn more about what you are seeking in your college experience.
All right, everyone. We really do hope that this information has kind of helped clarify Gonzaga's application process, as well as hopefully giving you a little bit of sense of what parts of the application that you have control over. Now we're going to address any questions that are in the Q&A box that haven't been answered yet. So please feel free to send those our way.
So Sarah or Steve, are there any questions that we should answer out loud?
Yes, can you elaborate a little bit more on the secondary school report? There are a few questions about that.
Yeah, great question. So the secondary school report is something that your school counselors or maybe your registrar will submit on your behalf. So if you use platforms like Naviance or Score, sometimes those will be able to be pulled in by your school administrator that way. However, they can also just find that on the College Board website, or we can provide a PDF copy to give to you to then have your counselor or registrar complete on your behalf. So just reach out to your counselor at your school and see if they have a process for requesting that. And if you need a PDF version from Gonzaga to then submit to your counselor, just email your admission counselor and we'll be happy to provide that to you.
Awesome. And then another question is, are interviews strictly for students who have already submitted their application?
That's a great question, and absolutely not. Students can interview with us at any point during their time in high school, and it really is helpful in this for like first semester of your senior year, either before you apply, so that we can advise you maybe on whether there's other areas of your application that you can maybe be a little bit stronger, or especially if you have questions on whether or not to submit a test score. An interview is a great place to go through the other aspects and factors of your application to make the best decision for you and to submit the strongest application possible. Also, if you've already submitted an application though, and you still have some questions or feel like an interview would really help bring some context to your application, you can absolutely interview now. There's never a bad time to interview.
And then another one is, how do you submit the mid-year report if you've completed the application in November? So any updated grades or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So your counselor, sometimes your school policy is that your counselors will submit those to us if they know that you've applied to Gonzaga automatically, but that's not always the case. So if that is something that you feel is definitely going to improve your application, you'll definitely want to follow up with your high school counselor on that, and then submit that to Gonzaga, and they can do that on your behalf. And then sometimes as we're reading applications, as we talked about, we really do pay attention to grade trends, and we want to see continuous improvement throughout high school. So if we feel as we're reviewing your application that we need a little bit more context or a little bit more data to make a well-informed decision on your application, we may reach out to you or your counselor to request
that. Here's another question. I've already done an admission interview. Should I do another one?
Yeah, so that's always a good question. Kind of like Alexa mentioned, there's no bad time to do an interview. If you ever want to schedule a second interview with an admission counselor, please feel free to do so. We're more than happy to kind of have a conversation with you about any sort of lingering questions about Gonzaga that you want to have. And it's a really great way to kind of build a little bit more connections with Gonzaga, and kind of find new things that you never knew the answer to.
Yeah, and just kind of building on that, our interviews are not very scary. Hopefully what you've gotten from this webinar, if anything, is that we in admissions are generally happy, kind people, and we just really want to help you, and that's what we're passionate about. So scheduling an interview or just a meeting with an admission counselor to get some more information and to chat with us, that's the stuff that we live for. So always feel free to reach out. Anytime you can get connected with us is a benefit to you, and it also really helps us as well.
There have been some questions about being test optional. Would you be able to describe the test optional policy and possibly even switching back and forth if you change your mind after you've submitted your test or your application?
Yeah, absolutely. So just for some context for folks, only about 30% of admitted students last year submitted a test score. So it really is up to the student as to whether or not they want to submit that score as a part of their application. So on the Common App, if you decide that you do want us to use your test scores and you've submitted test scores to us, that's great, and we will use them. If you change your mind a little bit after submitting the application, and even if we already have those test scores and you reach out to the Office of Admission, either your admission counselor, or our general admission inbox before December 23rd and say, actually, I have changed my mind. I do not want to use my test score. We can go ahead and make that change for you, and we will not review it as part of the application or as part of the scholarships. And there's no penalty for changing your mind. And vice versa, if you submit your application and say, no, I don't want to submit my test score, and then come November, you got a rock star score and you're super proud of it and you want to share that with us, you can always contact us and say, actually, yes, I do want to submit my score and here it is. And then we will make that change as well. After December 23rd, just with the timeline of needing to review applications and get decisions out to you in a timely manner, we're unable to make changes after that date.
I'm seeing a few questions about early application and early action and how that is relevant at Gonzaga and impacts other factors. Could you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, so Gonzaga doesn't have an early action or an early decision process anymore. So all the decisions will be released by Valentine's Day, February 14th. And again, that party deadline is also December 1st. So try to get your applications, hopefully, by then. Good questions.
Will this presentation be shared with participants?
Absolutely. So yes, all of the webinar series this fall is being recorded and they will be posted on our Gonzaga website, and we'll include an email a little bit later on once we have most of them concluded with a link to view all of them. But if you just go to our virtual Gonzaga website and click on the admission webinar series, where many of you may have found the link to register for this event, you'll see the recordings of this webinar and any future webinars this fall.
There's another question about nursing. How competitive is nursing, and what are some things that students can do to be more competitive for the program?
It's a great question. So it is a more competitive program. So for context, Gonzaga's acceptance rate is typically around 60 to 65% each year. So we're just about the national average. We really want well-rounded students from a variety of different backgrounds on our campus. The nursing program can be closer to 30 to 35% of an acceptance rate. So we still want really great, well-rounded students, but due to those clinical placements in our nursing program, which are 1-to-1 of a ratio, so it has to be a smaller program, we're just limited by the number of spots that we can offer students. As Levi mentioned during the program, we really highly recommend 4 years of math and science in high school. And we also recommend any healthcare experience that you've had throughout your extracurriculars. So that could be everything from volunteering to shadowing to an internship to a club at your school. And you definitely want to make sure to share those experiences in your application. The nursing application also has an additional short answer question, and you also really want to take your time in answering that thoroughly and very clearly, right? Connect your experiences and your passion to the fields of nursing, and even how that connects to Gonzaga's nursing program and its mission as a Jesuit university, pulling or trying to create leaders in the fields that folks are in. So I definitely recommend that. I do also highly recommend an admission interview for all students interested in nursing. It can be a really great way to understand the process of the application and decisions that are being made, as well as inform you of kind of where you're at within our pool typically, and give you any advice on making yourself the strongest applicant you can be.
I have another question. Does Gonzaga accept credits earned through IB, dual credits, AP credits? What does that process look like?
Yeah, we definitely accept credits through the IB, AP dual credit process. If you have questions about how those credits transfer over to Gonzaga, please feel free to reach out to your admission counselor. But we also have on our webpage our IB and AP policy as well too. That Sarah and Steve will put in the chat box for you to look at and kind of see how those credits transfers over from whichever class that you took to Gonzaga specifically.
Question about references. What references, what letters of recommendation does Gonzaga prefer?
Yeah, great question. So we require just one letter of recommendation from an academic teacher. So that would be maybe your English teacher, a science teacher, math, things like that. And then your counselor will send us that school report. You can absolutely send more than one letter of recommendation. If you submit them to us, or your teachers or coaches or community leaders submit them to us, we will review them as part of the application. Some tips as far as deciding on who to have write your letters of recommendation is definitely pick a teacher that you feel can speak to you kind of holistically, right? Maybe if they just taught you one semester versus one full academic year, they kind of have a better idea of who you are, both in the classroom in a long-term setting, as well as some growth that you may have experienced in their classes and things like that. If you are going to submit multiple letters of recommendation, I also recommend getting different perspectives. So maybe not all 3 letters of recommendation are from 3 different math teachers, but maybe we have a math teacher and then an English teacher and then maybe a club moderator or a coach, right? So they can speak to different aspects of your character and different ways that they've interacted with you. So it provides a more holistic approach to your application.
When will students receive notice of admission decisions as well as financial aid, and what is the decision deadline to commit to Gonzaga?
Great question. So as everyone applies by December 1, we try really hard to get admission decisions out to you as soon as we can. That timeline typically looks like mid to late February. Sometimes it can push into early March, but just know that we work as fast as we can while also making sure that we're honoring all the time and hard work that you've put into your application to make sure that we take a good look at those. So mid to late February is when students can expect to get an admission decision back from Gonzaga. As some of you may know, and we'll definitely be talking about in our financial aid webinars, we have 2 coming up this fall. There are some date changes in regards to the FAFSA, or the free application for federal student aid. In previous years, that was available for families and students to fill out in October. This year, it's looking like it's going to be more December. And so that has, of course, pushed back our financial aid notification timeline. The priority deadline to submit the FAFSA this year is February 1. So as soon as the FAFSA opens sometime in December, you'll want to get that started as soon as you can and submit that by February 1 for Gonzaga's financial aid priority deadline. And we will work as fast as we can with our folks in financial aid to get that information in financial aid award letters to you as that information becomes available. As we mentioned before, we are doing a how to apply for financial aid and scholarship webinar on October 10. And we're also going to have an understanding the FAFSA webinar later in November. So please stay tuned for those, as they're going to go more into detail on what that process is going to look like. I will also say, though, that when you apply to Gonzaga, you are automatically reviewed for academic merit scholarships that use the information on the Common App and are need blind, meaning we don't look at financial information when we review for those. And those academic merit scholarship information will be available in your admission decision letter in mid to late February.
There have been several questions about how to book an interview. And time, before we answer some more questions, there are a lot of questions in the chat. For those of you great people who have asked questions, I promise we'll get to everybody. We'll answer every single question. We're typing as quick as we can. So thank you for asking. And where do students go to book an interview?
Yeah, so I can actually answer that one. So that's a good question. If you want to schedule an interview, you can always go to our main webpage, gonzaga.edu/visit. So that would take you to our visit homepage, where you can schedule both an in-person interview if you want to come out to Spokane and do that, or you can also schedule a virtual interview with an admission counselor as well. Whichever option you pick from, either option is great. There'll be kind of a calendar that you can pick from, and you just select the dates that will best work with your schedule. And then from there, our visit office will contact you with information about your interview, and they'll handle the rest of it, so you don't have to work any harder. But we'll take care of the rest of it once you schedule your interview, and we'll be happy to sit down with you and talk.
How does Gonzaga handle students that are coming in with Running Start, and more specifically with an AA?
Great question. So Gonzaga does accept college credit through Running Start or any other dual enrollment or college in the high school credits that you may be taking. So we will look at your curriculum based on those Running Start classes. So we do view those college classes as advanced curriculum. So kudos to you for getting ahead of it. And you are still considered a first-year student. And as we talked about in the presentation, that really is the best of both worlds. So you can still be a first-year student with junior credit standing if you're coming in with your AA, but you'll still get all of the benefits of being a first-year student, like those scholarships being guaranteed for 4 years as long as students remain in good academic standing. What you'll do to make sure any of those credits transfer over is submit those official college transcripts if you decide to come to Gonzaga, which that decision day, which I believe was in the previous question that I forgot to answer, is May 1. So all students have to decide whether or not they want to attend GU by May 1. And if you do, you'll submit those official college transcripts to us, and we will get those posted to your profile, and our academic advising office will then take it from there to make sure that you are placed in appropriate level classes.
We have a question about preview day. Can students do an interview on preview day? And really, what is preview day as opposed to a normal visit?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good question. So preview days are one of my favorite days here on campus, but Really what it is that it's kind of a really in-depth dive into who we are as an institution. So students will get to kind of attend specific information sessions related to their academic program. So if you're interested in programs like business, engineering, nursing, and any examples, you get a deep dive into those programs from a faculty member. So if you don't learn about that, you also get to learn a little bit more about financial aid, get to be part of a student panel, and take a tour as part of take a tour of campus as well. Get to kind of see it in person as well too. And if you want, you can always do an optional admission interview at the end of the preview day. So kind of learning more about the admission process. Again, another really great way to build connections here at Gonzaga. And also another fun part, we provide free breakfast and free lunch. Can't go wrong with that. So if you definitely want to attend preview day, please feel free to sign up for that. Again, if you're interested in that, please go to gonzaga.edu/visit, and there'll be a link where you can register for those preview days.
What are the statistics of how much financial aid a student receives? Is there an average? Is there any information that you can provide talking about making Gonzaga more affordable?
Absolutely. We really do try to make Gonzaga affordable as we can. So as we mentioned, all students are automatically reviewed for those academic merit scholarships. And then there's additional scholarships that we also review students for, maybe based on academic interest or activities throughout high school. So 99% of our admitted students receive scholarship and financial aid. The average financial aid package at Gonzaga is right around $36,000 per year. And through the Gonzaga Guarantee, all Gonzaga funding, whether it's merit scholarships or need-based Gonzaga grants, are guaranteed for 4 years as long as students remain in good academic standing and are enrolled full-time.
And here's follow-up questions. Are international students eligible for merit scholarships? And are there any kind of tuition discount for multiple kids enrolled at GU?
Yes and yes. So international students are eligible for merit scholarships at Gonzaga, and we do offer a sibling discount. So if families have more than one student enrolled at Gonzaga at the same time, they are eligible for a family discount. If you attend or watch the recording of our future webinar for how to apply for financial aid, I'm sure they will go into what exactly that process looks like. And the bonus is when students may have graduated, like if they're not there at the same time and one has already graduated, then that other student that's currently a student at Gonzaga can then qualify to apply for an alumni scholarship.
A lot of different questions about the honors program and how that works at Gonzaga, as well as the application. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
For sure. So the honors program is a wonderful, robust program, and it's a cohort model. The application for the honors program will go live around mid-November. So definitely keep an eye on your email as well as the Gonzaga website for more information on that. And the deadline to apply for the honors scholarship or the honors program, as it is an additional application, is January 1. So you do apply for the honors program before you get your admission decision to Gonzaga. What I would recommend is definitely checking out the website or your email for invitations to our honors webinar, which I can look up the date really quickly because I don't have it off the top of my head, but it will be on October 19 at 6 p.m. Pacific time. You will get to connect with our honors coordinator, Erin Janowski, as well as Dr. Linda Tredenik, who is the honors program director, as well as various different honors students to learn more about both the curriculum and the community building that come with the honors program. So save it in your calendar now, October 19. Registration is live on our website, and that will also be recorded for future viewing for folks that cannot attend live.
Does religion play a large role in student life?
That's a good question. And it's a question that we do get often. So just for context, while Gonzaga University is a Catholic institution, students don't have to be Catholic or Christian in order to attend here on campus. Just for further context, in terms of kind of demographics, about a third of our students identify as Catholic or Christian, a third of our students identify as 30 other faiths that are represented here on campus, and then a third of our students identify as no religious affiliation at all. So whether you belong to a particular faith or maybe that's something not for you, you have the opportunity to kind of explore that a little bit more, kind of at your own pace, sort of make your own journey. We really like to say that religion is an invitation, not an obligation. Again, if you belong to a particular faith, you are more than welcome to kind of explore that through our mission and ministry office. We're more than happy to kind of engage with, dialogue, research, or finding places of worship. Or again, if that's something not for you, again, more than welcome to kind of explore that if you want to, or if you don't as well too. So good question. Hopefully that answers it a little bit more. And also kind of touching upon it briefly, we also, as part of our academic portion, within our university core curriculum, every student has 2 religion courses as part of that curriculum. And these are courses every student has to take regardless of what the major is. These are courses more kind of showing how religion has played a role throughout society. And there'll be a list of courses that students can choose from. There's 2 religious courses that students have to take. The first is in Christianity and Catholic traditions, and then the other is in world and comparative. So again, there will be a list of classes from students to choose from, and they just pick the ones that they're interested in. So that's a really good question.
And maybe if I can jump in here, faith is something that's very important to me. And I have lived all sorts of places. I've been to all sorts of universities. And I just feel so encouraged to live my faith. Gonzaga cultivates a very strong culture of encouraging others to live their faith, whatever that may be. And it's just a wonderful environment. And I feel encouraged. Honestly, it's easier to live my faith on campus than it is almost anywhere else, because other people live it for me. They're like, "Oh, you do this, and it's like, oh, thank you so much for being so considerate of me." I'm just so grateful to be a part of this community where faith is supported, whatever that faith may be, and we're just proud to have you on campus as Zach. Here is another question. What time do I need to decide on my major at Gonzaga in my studies?
That's a great question. So other than nursing, Gonzaga doesn't have other direct admission programs. So students have to apply into the nursing program as a senior in high school. You can always change your mind and switch out of nursing, but you cannot transfer into it. So if you have any inclination, I definitely recommend applying into the nursing program first, but also reach out to your admission counselor to have that conversation. Other than that, really students have a lot of flexibility. The sooner you declare your major, the more we can guarantee to get you out in 4 years, which is definitely our goal, but it's really up to you. Most typically, if students can decide on their major by their sophomore year or halfway through their sophomore year, then they're going to stay on a track to graduate in 4 years. And the great thing is, if you're still deciding, we welcome that. We want explorers on our campus, and through the core curriculum and academic advising and other faculty advisors available to you, there's a lot of support for students that are still trying to figure it out. You've got plenty of time, so don't stress out about that too much.
Here's another question. Are transcripts sent twice? So throughout the year, official transcripts, are they sent twice? And how important is the final transcript for admission consideration?
Yes, so we do require an official transcript when you apply to Gonzaga. Oftentimes, that does not include your first semester senior grades yet, or for your second semester because it hadn't happened yet, right? Or so we do require official transcripts to be sent as part of the application. And if you decide to attend Gonzaga post May 1, we do require your final official transcripts to be submitted to us to show that you have completed and graduated high school. It is really important that you don't get into a senior slump. We really want our students to end successfully so that they start at Gonzaga successfully. So we will look at those transcripts to make sure that there's nothing of concern that we need to look out for. Or if there is, we want to make sure that we get you connected with the correct support systems on our campus so that your transition to Gonzaga, which is an academically challenging university, are there for you so that you can succeed once you get to our campus.
I have another question. Is tuition based on general, full-time, and part-time status, or is it by credit?
Yeah, so it's based on general, full-time, and or part-time status for students. Good questions.
what type of club sports do you have? Are they competitive enough to make a team?
Great question. So many different types of club sports. So if you go to Zagtivities, which I might ask one of our other colleagues to put in the chat, that's where you can view all over 120 different clubs and organizations that Gonzaga offers, including club sports. Everything from softball to lacrosse to basketball to skiing and snowboarding, a little bit of everything. And the other great thing is if you don't see a club that you are interested in or a sport yet that we have at Gonzaga, it's a pretty simple process to get that started through our Gonzaga Student Body Association, as long as there's other students that also want to participate in it. The different club sports have a variety of different competitiveness. Some of them don't compete and are just really for folks that want to get together and play or participate. And some of them are a little bit more competitive, and they host tryouts each year for their students, and they have coaches and they travel and play against other universities. So it really just depends. But the alternative too is that we have a very active intramural culture at Gonzaga. About 60% of our students participate in intramural. So students of all levels, whether you have never played a sport in your life or you've been playing your whole life, but you want to play with the other folks in your residence hall and just get out and try something new, really all students are welcome to participate in any sort of sporting activity.
Can you get a major or a minor in a pre-professional program such as pre-law and pre-health, or do you have to be on a specific track instead?
Yeah, that's a good question. So kind of our pre-law or pre-med programs are not specific majors or minors students select, but more of kind of sort of like a certification-based program. Really what they are kind of opportunities for students to sort of develop those skills that they would need for entry into like a law school or medical school in the future. So students have the opportunity to choose from any of the majors here on campus. And they can use that knowledge that they're learning in classroom in addition to the knowledge that they're learning with their pre-professional track to kind of enhance their coursework. So whichever track that students get to pick from, they have the opportunity to kind of engage in workshops, getting to connect with professionals out there in the field, internships, all sorts of awesome opportunities. And they also get connected with an advisor in that track as well too, who can provide additional guidance and support as needed if students have any questions in the future.
There have been some great questions about internships and internships at Gonzaga, and then the experience that leads into for careers. Would you be able to talk a little bit more about internships?
Absolutely. So our Center for Career and Professional Development really helps students across majors and all 4 years. Everything from helping you strengthen your resume writing skills, as well as conducting mock interview workshops where then you can practice your interview skills when you have those opportunities presented to yourself. We also host 2 on-campus career fairs each year at Gonzaga. And we also sponsor career treks. So we take our students to major cities in the US and to London, where they get to attend networking events and visit certain companies on site to get to learn more about those fields and also connect with alumni and employers of future ZAG students. And that can include some summer internship opportunities. So for internships at Gonzaga, you can absolutely do internships for credit, and you can also do internships for pay. It's really up to the student and what they find fits best for their schedule and their needs. The Center for Career and Professional Development will help connect you with various different internship opportunities that they're aware of, and then again, prepare you for those application processes. So we don't assign students internships, but it is very highly encouraged. About 78% of students at Gonzaga do participate in an experiential opportunity. That includes internships. It also includes research or community engaged learning classes.
We have a good question that could go off of it, which is what leadership opportunities do you have at Gonzaga?
Ooh, that's a very good question. So here at Gonzaga, we really do believe that every student here on campus has the potential for leadership. And there's a lot of great ways that students can get involved with that. I'm sure Sarah and Steve will be dropping some links in the chat box for students to kind of explore that a little bit more. But just some of the examples include, opportunities for students to engage in programs like student government, working in their club and organization and kind of being a club officer and sort of being in that role, or participating in one of our leadership programs here on campus. So There's a lot of great ways, like I mentioned, for students to get involved with that. We try to highly encourage students to participate in those because those skills really do come in handy in the future.
Here's another question that I'd like to take if I could. The question is about using humor in the admission essay, and is it frowned upon? My answer is no, absolutely not. We want you to be able to express yourself with your essay. It does not, sometimes people think when they're looking at the college essay that it has to be this really deep, traumatic experience that happened in your life. And it can be that. And it could also be something that is light. It can also be something that is fun. We want to make sure that you're able to write well, you're able to write a cohesive statement, and that you're able to have great grammar. But the content, the actual subject matter that you're talking about can vary greatly. So don't feel like it has to be heavy. Don't feel like it has to be really serious. In fact, I think the default is traumatic. And please, you don't have to write about traumatic. Write about a great football game. Write about, something that is also happy and chipper. You can do that too. So very good question. Here's another question. We've talked on this a little bit before, but there are some concerns about a troubling freshman year with COVID. And you've mentioned grade trends. But could you talk a little bit more about that and about the holistic process?
Yeah, absolutely. The wonderful thing is there's real people reading your applications. All 4 of us in this webinar and all of our colleagues have lived experiences, including living through COVID. Now, we didn't do it while we were in high school, and I can only imagine the hardships that faced. But we are well aware of some of the difficulties that students face, whether that be online learning, loss of job and income from family members or parents that adds extra stress. Maybe we're the primary caretaker for siblings or elderly grandparents, right? Things like that. So we absolutely understand that there were so many factors that impacted your ability to learn and to learn successfully in that first year of high school, and even subsequently once you transition back into the classroom, whenever that was for you. So I definitely recommend that students use that question on the Common App to explain what did that look like for you, right? You can't assume that we know everything, but we do understand that COVID did have an impact on folks in a variety of different ways. So use that time to share as much as you would like with us on how that impacted you in your grades, and also use that to share with us how you decided to overcome some of those obstacles, right? Did you find some study groups that you were able to get a part of through Zoom, right? Or did you, email your faculty or your teacher afterwards, or once you were able to go in the classroom, taking advantage of being able to see your teachers in classroom and taking advantage of maybe some of that extra study time. So what steps did you take to overcome some of this? Was it just hours on Khan Academy and YouTube, right? But that initiative to those obstacles is also really important to us. So use that section of the COVID section on the Common App, and also feel free to bring up some of those obstacles and how you overcame them in an admission interview with your counselor.
Here's a great question. How will you measure diversity in the student body?
Yeah, so we use, I believe, IPEDS, which is the national government sanction. So we have about, I think it's 38%. I think 28% students of color at Gonzaga. And so that includes all BIPOC students. So we are a predominantly white institution, and there are so many great ways that Gonzaga supports their students of color. I am a Gonzaga alum. I am also a woman of color, so I can speak from experience to this. Through our Unity Multicultural Education Center, as well as the variety of different cultural clubs and the Unity Alliance of Cultural Clubs on campus, what I love is the way Gonzaga handles diversity and education of that is it is equal parts education and celebration. So there are so many opportunities for students of color to find community on campus and to build that relationship and maybe even learn more about their culture and other cultures, as well as using our resources to educate the greater Gonzaga community. So just as much as we love celebrating the different clubs through the Black Student Union dinner, as well as the Filipino American Student Union Barrio and the Latin American Student Union Fiesta, we also offer guest speakers and films and intercultural dialogue classes at Gonzaga. So it's really that wonderful blend of celebration and education and empowering all students to embrace who they are.
Here's another great question. What is student life like at Gonzaga? Are sports important community events that students go to? Question mark.
Yeah, I would definitely say sports are a very important piece here at Gonzaga. Perhaps you have seen, or perhaps you haven't, but our men's and women's basketball teams are our most popular sports here on campus. We're definitely playing a lot of the time on national TV, whether it's channels like ABC, CBS, NBC, NBC, whichever channel that we're on. But sports is really important piece here at Gonzaga. We're a Division I school, so we play in the West Coast Conference. So we have 16 different Division I sports for students to watch. Like I mentioned, basketball is our most popular sport here on campus, but we also have additional sports in baseball, volleyball, track and field, cross country, soccer, just to name a few examples. So if in the future you decide that Gonzaga is the place for you, you're more than welcome to watch an athletic event here on campus and root for your fellow Zags.
I'll also add on to that while sports is a wonderful part of Gonzaga, it's okay if you're not super into sports or basketball. There are so many other opportunities to find community and build community at GU. Our McCarthy Athletic Student Center only seats about 1,300 students, and we've got about 5,000 undergrads. So you're not the only one that won't be at that game if you choose not to attend, right? We have a lovely and lively performing arts culture here at GU through theater or dance. We have comedy, sports, wonderful art scene, great service opportunities that students find as well. So really, we welcome students with a variety of different interests. That saying, if you are a sports fan and you love college basketball, there is literally no better place to be than the Kennel.
Unless you are on the opposing team and you're in the Kennel. And I will say that as we look at students who choose to come to Gonzaga, the main driving force behind almost every student's decision to come to GU, it's really academics. Academics is a big driving force behind people's decision, and the community. It's just such a wonderful, welcoming community, and people feel supported and valued. Here's another question. How early should one apply for housing?
Great question. So admission decisions will go out mid to late February, and immediately as those go out, the housing application is live. And I definitely recommend that you apply for those as soon as you can. It is non-binding and there is no deposit required, either for tuition or for housing. What it does though, is it gives you an earlier time slot in order to submit or to then choose your housing option if you decide to come to Gonzaga. So again, there is no penalty to filling out the housing application, and then come May 1, if you decide Gonzaga is not the place for you, that's okay. We'll just remove your name from the list and there's no penalty for that. So definitely apply for housing as soon as you can, right when admission decisions are open. And that goes the same way for living learning communities. Those do require an additional application. And just for context, we will have different opportunities to connect with our housing staff later this fall, as well as into the spring for more information. But if you are interested in our living learning communities, those do require a separate application. And I also recommend that you submit those as soon as you can, as those are based on a rolling admission. So once space fills up, space fills up. So the sooner you get your application in, the better. And again, it is non-binding and no tuition or payment or deposit is required.
Here's another question about the weather. Can you speak to the weather in Spokane? Do you find many students coming from California having a hard time with gray weather, or is it significantly different from the Seattle area?
Great question. I'll take this one as someone who grew up in California. I'm originally from Los Angeles. I grew up in Burbank, so shout out to the San Fernando Valley. It is not like Seattle. We get over 200 days of sun in Spokane, so it is not as gray and rainy. It's actually, for any folks visiting or zooming in from the Colorado area, our climate's actually really similar to Denver more than it is Seattle. So we get 200 days of sun, but we do get 4 true seasons. So it's up to 100 degrees in the summer, which is super fun and great time to get out on the lake or the river or some hikes. But we do get 2 to 3 feet of snow in the winter. So it is a little bit different in that sense, but it's a really fun winter. It is not a Midwest or East Coast winter. You will not be holed up in underground tunnels for 3 months out of the year. You get to go and experience new things. One of my favorite memories from my first year at Gonzaga was an impromptu midnight snowball fight on our intramural field. And I would have never been able to do that in California. And it was so much fun. A good pair of boots, not Uggs, something that is waterproof, and a good jacket, and you will be fine. And the great thing is our campus community and our guest services and plant services do a wonderful job of making sure that they clean up campus and it's safe to walk around with de-icing and plowing and things like that.
We are about at time, but I will put one last question in your direction, and it's, are there still spring overnight visits after admission?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we do have a program for students who qualify for either our community scholars or our Wilson Scholar scholarships. That's known as our fly-in program. So for students who are eligible for that, typically around our admitted student event day, which happens in late spring, towards kind of the end of April, what the fly-in program does is that the university will fly out students, in addition, pair them with a student here on campus, and that kind of select group of students will be able to stay on campus for those couple of days, get to attend our admitted events, and get to be kind of part of the Gonzaga experience for a little bit. But if you ever want to visit campus here, please feel free to do so. We're more than happy to find opportunities for you to kind of explore campus, whether that's through a campus visit, an admission interview, or just getting to know Spokane a little bit better. But that's a good question. All right. So since we are at time, I'm going to share my screen again here in a second. So as we kind of wrap up our webinar today, again, a huge thank you to all of you who joined us this evening. It's been a really great pleasure to be part of it too. And we do appreciate kind of for you taking the time out of your day and getting to listen to us talk a little bit about Gonzaga. Like Alexa mentioned earlier, we do have our other webinars coming up here. So feel free to register for those if you ever want to learn more about them, whether that's about diversity, financial aid, finding a community, the honors program, or understanding the FAFSA a little bit more. You can always register for those at that link below, gonzaga.edu/virtualgonzaga. We also have our preview days coming up later this fall on October 6th, November 3rd, and November 10th. If you ever want to register for those, please feel free to visit gonzaga.edu/visit. We also do host a number of in-person and virtual information sessions, interviews, student panels, and daily campus visits for you to connect with Gonzaga more. Please feel free to sign up for those by visiting our visit page and our virtual visit page. And we do wish for you the best in your college process, and hope you'll let us know if you never need additional support or help with any questions or concerns that you may have. Lastly, thanks for attending the webinar today and your interest in hopefully being a Gonzaga student. And with that, take good care, everyone. That concludes the end of the webinar.